Welcome to Humble Beginnings, the Undrafted podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Hamilton Jr., and I hope you had a good holiday season. I hope you had a great new year. 2019 is upon us, and man, time flies like a jet plane, man. It seems just like yesterday we were bringing in 2018, and now here we are in 2019, so I hope your new year, the little bit of it that we've been through, I hope it's going well for you, and I wish you nothing but the best in the year 2019. Coming up on the podcast in the Low with Row, we'll talk about Vance Joseph being fired by the Denver Broncos earlier this week. In I'm In and I'm Out, Mike Pereira, the Fox Rules NFL analyst and former head of officiating for the NFL, said what a lot of fans are thinking when they watch NFL games. The game is way over-officiated. And also, Antonio Brown, he's requested a trade from the Pittsburgh Steelers in what has become a huge soap opera in the National Football League just within the last week or two. In What's the Wave with Chef Rodaddy, I'll have part 2 of some surprisingly carb-rich foods and how they can slow down your progress in you meeting your goals. And in my last segment, this is some bull jive. Andrew Wiggins, he talks some mad trash about Timberwolves fans. And the crazy thing is, they had every right to do what they did to push his buttons. Well, without further ado, let's get into the Low with Row. Vance Joseph was fired by the Broncos this past Monday after a rough 2 seasons in the Mile High City. Now, the firing came one day after the Broncos lost to the Chargers 23-9 in a game that was sloppy and undisciplined. Now, with Joseph being gone, the Broncos now face their 4th head coaching search in the last 8 years. I've been a big critic of Vance Joseph and his staff on this podcast a lot this season. Now, I wasn't a fan of his game management skills, and some of his game plans had me straight up scratching my head more than a few times. There were the calls like the one against the Texans a few months ago, actually about 2 months ago, where he picked the wrong time and distance to try and kick a field goal. Or the one against the Browns a few weeks back on 4th and 1 where he elected to kick the field goal instead of going for the first down or the touchdown. But with all that being said, Vance Joseph was not the only problem in Denver. Bill Musgrave, he served as Denver's offensive coordinator this season, and Denver's offense could not have been more predictable and unfruitful. Chris Harris Jr., he sat at his locker on Monday when the team was cleaning out their lockers for the season. He says Denver got behind the times of the NFL. He feels like after the Super Bowl back in 2015, the organization got stagnant, and they failed to inject any of the new concepts or strategies that are in heavy use across the league right now into any form of the offense. Chris Harris Jr. is right, and it showed many, many times over the course of the season. Denver has had an anemic offense really the last 2 seasons. Now, that's not all on Vance Joseph. That's an indictment of his offensive coordinator. Musgrave, he refused to run the ball more. He refused to put Case Keenum in more play action sets, and he refused to get more creative on offense. Case Keenum, he does his best work in play action. He's more of a Jake Plummer type of quarterback. They can win you some games, and I'm not really sure they'll get you to the Super Bowl, but if you put them in the right system and the right offense and run plays that fit their strengths, they can win you some games. And with the talent that Denver has in their backfield with Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman, they could have done a lot more when it comes to creativity in the offense. Injuries to Emmanuel Sanders and Jake Butt at tight end, that didn't help things. Then, of course, the team traded Demaryius Thomas a little over a month ago. On the defensive side of the ball, Joe Woods, he made some terrible calls as the defensive coordinator as well. Some of the calls on defense during some of the biggest games for Denver left me wondering what in the world were the Broncos doing. Like the call against Kansas City and Denver back in week 4 on 3rd and 20. Now, this is late in the game. Kansas City, they had, I think it was 1 or 2 penalties leading up to that. It's 3rd and 20. So I'm sitting here thinking that, okay, Denver's going to come after them with a blitz, and they're going to get off the field, and they're going to keep everything in front of them. Denver gets the 4th down, or Kansas City gets put on 4th down, and Denver takes the ball over, and, they can kind of start working on putting the game away. Now, Joe Woods, he elects to put guys in man coverage instead of zone, and he didn't even bring a blitz. And, of course, Kansas City, they go on to convert, get the first down, and they drove down the field for the game-winning touchdown. Now, he consistently had Bradley Chubb dropping back in coverage when he was drafted to rush the passer. The secondary, they took a major step backwards this season, and some of that is on John Elway and the front office because you cannot keep letting go of veterans like Aqib Talib and guys who are good players and put rookies and inexperienced guys in their place and not expect a considerable drop-off to happen. If you want quality, you have to pay for it. You get what you pay for. And this is the thing. I love the Broncos. I think John Elway's done a great job. Every GM goes through rough patches, but you can't keep consistently trying to get great production on cheap paychecks or cheap contracts and expect to get great results. You get what you pay for. Now, I wouldn't mind seeing a new defensive coordinator in Denver after the last 2 years under Joe Woods. The Broncos, they were constantly playing undisciplined football under Vance Joseph the last 2 years. That's been a huge bugaboo of this season since Vance Joseph first made his way into Dove Valley. In Sunday's game alone against the Chargers, they had 3 or 4 holding calls in a row on one single drive that pulled a touchdown off the board and gave the Chargers the momentum, and then they just took the game over, and they didn't let up after that. John Elway and the Broncos front office, they also didn't do Vance Joseph any favors at the quarterback spot. Last season, they gave him Trevor Siemian, Brock Osweiler, and Paxton Lynch to work with. What is a coach supposed to do with quarterbacks like that? Now, Trevor Siemian, he came into the season last year hot, and then he fizzled out because I actually liked Trevor Siemian at first, and then it became clear that this just wasn't going to work out with Trevor Siemian. Then they go out and they get Brock Osweiler, and Brock Osweiler was terrible. I mean, I really hate to just trash talk dudes, but there's just no other way to put it. Brock Osweiler was not a very good quarterback. He went down to Houston with the Texans, and he bombed out so bad there, they gave Cleveland some draft picks to get Brock Osweiler's contract off their books. Then turn right around, the Cleveland Browns, they paid Brock Osweiler's salary for him to go away. And with that, that's how the Broncos were able to get him for so cheap. I think they paid him like less than $1 million or something like that last season. So you have those two working with you. Then you have Paxton Lynch, who they traded up in the first round of the draft in 2016, and he fizzled out so bad, he's not even in the league anymore. So from that standpoint, the Broncos didn't do Vance Joseph any favor by giving him, mediocre to bad quarterbacks in the most important position on the football field. I was really surprised when they brought Brock Osweiler back because I'm like, okay, you've seen what he did in Houston. You've seen what he did in Cleveland. And yet and still, the Broncos, they saw fit to sign him and think they would give him some kind of football rehab after everything you've seen over the last few years. Come on, Denver. Seriously? John Elway, he deserves a fair share of the blame because his drafts have been consistently lacking, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And honestly, I will say this, as revered as John Elway is in Denver for what he did as a player, he'll always have that. You can't take that away from John Elway, what he did as a player. But if this coaching search or this coaching hire that they're about to go through and with the search and everything else, if this particular coaching hire doesn't pan out, then the Broncos, they're going to have to start looking for a new GM. John Elway's done a really good job up until this point. Every GM, they swing and miss. I get it. But if this coaching hire doesn't work out, you're looking at your 5th head coach in the last, 10 or 11 years. That's not a good look at all. So if this particular coaching hire doesn't work out, 2-3 years, Denver's going to have to do some looking at a new GM. John Elway hadn't been able to scout a quarterback to save his life, and I can't really, I'm not surprised. Most of the time, when a guy is great at something, it's really kind of hard for them to scout that particular position. Now, he can scout defenses like nobody's business. I mean, that's how they came across Von Miller and Derek Wolfe and Danny Trevathan and what's another one? Brandon Marshall and, Darian Stewart, Justin Simmons, all these dudes, Chris Harris Jr. He can scout defensive players with the best of them. It's his offensive picks that really need the most help. Bad picks along the line and at the running back position have hindered this team big time offensively over the years. Now, this past draft was the best draft the Broncos have had since John Elway came back to the team in the GM role in 2011. The quarterback spot, it's still not settled either. Case Keenum, he had a bad year. Now, some of that's not, well, all of that's not on Case Keenum. Some of that is learning a new system, and some of that is on the offensive coordinator not putting him in a system that fits his strengths. Coaches, they're supposed to put players in the best position to win, and that was not the case with Case Keenum in 2018. He had to learn new wide receivers on the fly, basically, because of injuries and trades. He didn't have any good tight end play after Jake Butt. He went down with that ACL injury. And the Broncos, they didn't run enough plays and formations that fit his strengths from the jump. So what do you do at the quarterback spot in 2019? There's really no sexy pick coming out of the upcoming draft. There's no big-time free agent quarterback coming on the market anytime soon. Some people say the Broncos are probably going to go after Nick Foles, but I'm not so sure that deal's going to make sense for the Broncos financially because they have so many other holes to fill. And even if they were to sign Nick Foles and get rid of Case Keenum, they're still, I think, on the hook for $10 million worth of Case Keenum's salary. So that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for the Broncos to do that. So considering all that and all the holes that Denver has to fill along, the offensive and defensive sides of the football, it sounds like Denver's going to be stuck with Case Keenum next season. Well, I guess I shouldn't say it like that. I say it like it's just the worst thing in the world. Sounds like they're going to have to stick with Case Keenum next season. Now, to be honest with you, as much as I love the Broncos, this team is in shambles. They really are. The ownership situation, it's messy. It's tied up in court. There's no head coach, at least for right now. There's no stability at the quarterback position. It seems like Denver's hiring a new coach every 2 years. Even though Gary Kubiak's situation, the Broncos, they really couldn't help that. Gary Kubiak had to step down because of his health. But when you have that many moving parts at the top of an organization, it might be kind of hard for the Broncos to lure like a top-notch candidate to come and take the lead. Now, I'm not sure who the next head coach of the Broncos will be, but whoever he is, he's got to be a strong leader. He needs to be strong on one side of the ball, and he needs to have great coordinators on both sides of the ball because the coordinator in the NFL, your coordinators, they can make you or break you. Now, it sounds like Denver's interested in keeping Gary Kubiak on as an offensive coordinator, so that's definitely going to help the offense coming into 2019. That situation's still kind of fluid because you have reports saying that he's going to stay on as offensive coordinator. Then you have reports saying that because of his health and because of the stress of that position, the Broncos are leaning more towards putting him in like some kind of, senior management role. So we'll see how that plays out. But it really doesn't matter who the Broncos bring in at the offensive coordinator position. If he can't incorporate a lot of the new formations and variations and things like that and the wrinkles and things that are going on in the NFL, if he can't do a lot of that and if he can't coach the talent that he has up to run these kinds of offenses and to run these kinds of plays and to run these kinds of gadget plays and things like that, it's not going to matter who they have. If he can't recognize talent and if he can't coach it up and if he can't get creative. So those are the things that Denver's really going to have to look for with this coaching and staff search. There's a lot of instability at the top of the Broncos organization, and I sincerely hope they can get a great coach who can recognize talent and truly coach guys up because that's the thing in the NFL. You can't escape bad coaching in the NFL. Coaching is everything, and it's not even just in the NFL. You can't escape bad coaching in any sport. Coaching is everything, and until the Broncos get that right, they're going to continue to struggle. I sincerely hope the Broncos have learned some valuable lessons over the last few years. All right, let's move on to I'm in and I'm out. Fox NFL rules analyst Mike Pereira said in a phone interview last week something we've all said when we sit down and we watch NFL games lately. Pereira said, quote, "The game is over-officiated, and here's the issue to me. I study a lot of plays and I ask myself, would I have downgraded that? The officiating is getting way too technical, and it's affecting the game and how the game looks." I could not have said this any better. The NFL is simply suffering from paralysis by analysis. Yes, the game needs to be as safe as possible. We want these players to be safe. But the way some of these rules are written, the NFL is asking guys to do things that are almost physically impossible. Like the rule about driving the quarterback down to the ground. If a defender is coming at a quarterback full speed or at a high rate of speed and he hits him or he sacks him, how in the world is he supposed to try and contort his and the quarterback's body in a way that doesn't hurt the quarterback mid-fall? Exactly. It's almost impossible because we already saw William Hayes of the Dolphins tear his right ACL because of this rule on a play where he sacked Raiders quarterback Derek Carr on a third down play earlier this year. On top of the fact, there's simply too many flags in today's game. There's simply too many flags in almost every NFL game. Fans don't tune into games to watch the refs. Me personally, I don't care about the refs. I just don't. They're there to enforce the rules within the confines of the field. Outside of that, the refs can stay out of the way. Like, sure, there's been some famous refs like Ed Hockley with his big biceps, and he had a great knack for explaining the call and breaking it down to where fans could understand what was going on. Then we had Mills Lane in boxing back in the day. You know, he was famous for saying, you know, let's get it on. But fans don't tune into a football game or any sporting event for that matter looking to see what the refs are going to do. There's been several times this season where we talked more about the bad officiating in a game than we did the actual game. But none of this really should come as a surprise, though. When you really sit down and think about it, this shouldn't really be a big surprise because officiating in the NFL has been on the decline for at least the last 5 years. They don't have to call every little thing. It's like Mike Pereira said in this interview. If a wide receiver flinches a shade before the snap, let it go. If a wide receiver and a DB, if they're pushing and shoving, but neither one is getting an advantage and it's not egregious, let it go. I mean, if the wide receiver's not getting an advantage, if he's not pushing off, I mean, where it's just blatantly obvious, or if the DB's not blatantly interfering with the pass or with the play, then that's just something you don't have to call. I mean, at the end of the day, let these dudes play the game. You know, this is how they used to do it, and the game was so much more fun to watch back then. But, you know, at the end of the day, having said all that, this is not all on the NFL refs, though. This just simply isn't. Because the NFL has handcuffed these officials with airtight rules that are predicated to drive more offensive points league-wide because fans love points. And then they've left very little wiggle room for the ref's judgment, which affects gamesmanship. That's how officiating used to be. Football, at its core, is sanctioned violence. There's only so much you can do to protect against injury. These are grown men who are pushing and shoving each other. This man is here. I'm trying to get him to move over here against his will. And no matter how many rules you put in place or try to enforce, injuries are simply going to happen. These athletes, they're bigger, they're faster, they're stronger than NFL players in the past. You've got 22 guys flying around all kinds of directions, pushing and shoving each other, hitting each other, moving at world-class speed, and all of this happens in a span of maybe 3 to 5 seconds. The average NFL play doesn't take that long. The average NFL play takes literally 3 to 5 seconds. You have all these flying body parts, you have all this speed, and you got all these dudes moving around in such a short time span. It's next to impossible to catch every little thing. And yet, the NFL seems hell-bent on doing just that. This waters down the product, and it ultimately turns fans off. Now, I'm not one of those guys who like to say, oh, you know, the sky's falling, the ratings are falling for the NFL, da-da-da-da-da. No, I'm not saying that because clearly that's not happening. But the product is suffering from the over-officiating of these games. Then the league wonders why fans are upset about all these flag fests. Come on, NFL. Do better. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Man, the Steelers, they have more drama going on right now than the Kardashians. Antonio Brown, he's reportedly asked to be traded from the Steelers following an altercation with Ben Roethlisberger in practice last week. Now, the feud comes after Brown was a healthy scratch for Sunday's game against the Bengals for missing practices. Brown has been spotted on social media dropping hints that he's interested in going to the 49ers or even other teams. I'm in on trading Antonio Brown. The Steelers, they almost have to move Antonio Brown out of there. Now, it's not going to be a huge loss for him when you really sit down and think about it. It's not going to be a big loss. Yes, Antonio Brown, he puts up great numbers. Yes, he's one of the best wide receivers in the game. Yes, he gives an offense a great weapon to attack defenses with. But what have the Steelers done with him since he's been there? They haven't won a Super Bowl since he's been there. They haven't made much noise in the playoffs since he's been there. And this is not a knock on Antonio Brown individually. All this is saying is that as great of a player as Antonio Brown is, you haven't won anything of substance with him. And now you have this big cloud hanging over your locker room And now you have this big cloud hanging over your locker room with the things that are going on between him and Ben Roethlisberger. Is he really worth it at this point? Now, if they can get some good draft picks and or a player in a deal, if I was the Steelers management, I would move on from Antonio Brown. When you have this much drama between teammates and it's getting as public as it is, nothing good is going to come of it. Because that locker room is one of the most dysfunctional locker rooms in all of sports. You know, every team has its issues between guys in the locker room. Every team has that. It happens. But this squad right here, man, they really seem to be like the only ones that openly air grievances with guys in the media. And you already know, once you get the media in your business, it's a wrap. You know, all of this is not on Antonio Brown. You know, Antonio Brown, he's a great player, but he's not that great of a leader. But it's also on Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger is a good quarterback, but he's a terrible leader. Now, this dude, he points fingers at the other man every chance he gets. He never takes responsibilities for his mistakes, like when he threw those interceptions in the Denver game a few weeks back. He basically threw Antonio Brown and the other receiver, I can't remember his name, he basically threw them under the bus when he said something to the effect of, I'll make my mistakes, but I'm basically going to keep playing the way I play, and they basically need to adjust. Like, I mean, it was... You know, that I'm paraphrasing, of course, what he said, but I mean, that's basically the context of what he said. And it was just, you know, straight finger pointing. I'm not taking the blame for this, that, and the other. And it was classic Ben Roethlisberger. And, you know, then he goes and he tries to, you know, it seemed like he was trying to get sympathy in the media. You know, he's talking about how him and some other guys, they text Antonio Brown after everything happened, but they never heard anything back from him. You know, now he did this same thing when all that craziness was going on with Le'Veon Bell and the team, and then he said he never heard back from him. Well, you know, when you really step back and look at it, who's the constant in those two situations? You know, it seems to me like, at least for these two teammates, it seems like they clearly don't want to be bothered with him. And as far as this whole Antonio Brown soap opera, to me, this is karma for the Steelers treating L. Bell the way they did when he was holding out. Because, you know, you never hear guys talk about another man's money, at least publicly. You never see teammates call out a guy for holding out for the best financial situation for him with contract negotiations. You never hear that. And these dudes, you know, while you may have guys that may have an issue with it privately, they really never go public with it the way the Steelers did. And it was just, I'm still shocked at the way they acted about that whole deal. You know, then they go and they ransacked his locker and they went through his stuff and they were putting it all on social media like it was a big joke and everything else. And now this is where they're at. That locker room is fractured. That relationship between Big Ben and Antonio Brown is fractured. And all of this falls at the feet of head coach Mike Tomlin for the simple fact that he chose not to put guys in their place with saying so much to the media with the L. Bell drama. He chose not to put Antonio Brown in his place a long time ago with some other instances that this dude has been involved in inside that locker room, like with the whole Facebook Live incident after the playoff game against the Chiefs back in, I think that was 2017. You know, Mike Tomlin, he really didn't put him in his place. And I love Mike Tomlin. I think Mike Tomlin's a great coach. But I think, and you know, he's a player's coach. You hear the players rave about him. But I think it also may be a situation where maybe, just maybe, Mike Tomlin is a little bit too much of a player's coach. But, you know, whatever the case is, Mike Tomlin, he helped create this monster. He helped make this bed. And now he and the Pittsburgh Steelers organization, they got a lay in it. What's the wave with Chef Rodaddy? Now, I say this all the time on this podcast that this has become my favorite segment because I talk about sports and athletes on this show a lot. And part of being a great athlete or being very good at any sport is making good eating choices. Now, you may not be a pro athlete or play a certain sport or multiple sports, but that doesn't mean you can't be the best version of yourself by putting good food in your body. Last week, I started this little mini-series in What's the Wave, where I told y'all about some surprising foods that are healthy, well, at least some of them, and some that are marketed as healthy, but they aren't all that healthy. Now, these foods, they have more carbs than your average bowl of pasta, and they come from surprising places. Now, before I start part 2 of this mini-series, let me just say that carbs are not your enemy. At least all of them aren't your enemy. Your body needs carbs to function. And no matter what diet, lifestyle change, meal plan, whatever it is, no matter which one of them you're on, You need carbs to function. You need carbs to lose fat. You need carbs to maintain muscle. You need carbs to build muscle. And if you're like me, you need carbs to do all three of them. Now, the key is to feed your body good carbs. Good, healthy carbs come from things like whole grains, oatmeal, vegetables, fruit. It's the bad carbs from refined foods, sugar, excess bread and starch, candy, high fructose corn syrup, etc. that packs the pounds on us. So here are some more surprising carb-rich foods to look out for that can slow down your progress. Bananas. Now, this one right here, bananas are good for you, and they're a good carb, but they can turn bad real quickly. Now, bananas, they're a good source of magnesium, which helps protein synthesis, which leads to an increase in lean muscle mass. But they also have a lot of sugar, well, natural sugar. They also have a lot of natural sugar and carbs in them. 35 grams of carbs per large banana. Now, a large banana is considered a banana that is 9 inches in length or more. So with bananas, just really watch your intake of them. Now, I don't eat too many bananas because one banana does have so many carbs, and that can basically set me off for the whole day. So I generally opt for other fresh fruits when it comes to fruits. But if you are going to eat bananas, just be careful and watch your portion size. Like I said on the last podcast, portion size is everything. So as you start practicing portion control, your body will recondition itself. But portion control is everything. But at the end of the day, even though bananas, they tend to be a little higher in carbs, they're not the worst thing for you. Now, this next one is going to sound crazy, but I'll explain it. Pie. Now, this one isn't a surprise at all because it's an indulgent treat. And when it comes to pie, there is nothing better than a pecan pie. Lord Jesus, pecan pie is what that is, and that's exactly why I have to stay away from it. But what is surprising is the serving size of pie in relation to how many carbs you're taking in when you eat a slice of it. A 1/8 inch slice of a pie that is 9 inches in diameter has 43 grams of carbs or more, depending on how much sugar and fillings like fruit and things like that you put in it. That small slice of sweet, sugary heaven holds more carbs and sugar than a bowl of pasta. Now, why is the whole pasta thing important? Because pasta tends to turn into sugar when our body breaks it down during the digestion process. That's why you want to watch out. That's why you want to watch out with what you're putting in your body when it comes down to carbohydrates and sugar, because it doesn't have to necessarily start off as sugar for your body to turn it into sugar when it starts to digest it. The next carby food, cranberry sauce. Now, the holidays, they were just here. And ain't nothing like some cranberry sauce on top of the dressing. Man, look here, because the dressing is the MVP. The dressing is the MVP of holiday food. I don't care what nobody say. You can keep the turkey. You can keep the ham. Well, I'll take maybe like a slice of ham. But you can keep all the other stuff, man. Look, give me the dressing. Give me the yams. Give me the greens and the macaroni and cheese. And I'm set, bruh. I'm set. And as far as dressing, you can't mess up dressing with gravy because it gets all soggy. Then it tastes like wet bread, and it just feels funny. Yeah. Anyway, you can't mess up dressing with gravy. Now, when it comes to cranberry sauce, it's got to be the jelly cranberry sauce. You can't do the whole cranberry sauce because whole cranberry sauce ain't cranberry sauce. I don't care what nobody say. That ain't the wave. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Let me move on. Anyway, a half cup of this jiggly sweet treat has 56 grams of carbs, 220 calories, and 48 grams of sugar. So if you're on a low carb plan or if you're on a low sugar plan, just take this in as like a holiday cheat meal and then just keep it to a minimum. Like, yeah. Remember, even if you're doing cheat meals, it's still all about portion. Portion control is everything. As soon as you get full, drop that fork. Next one up. Now, this one right here is going to hurt some people. Smoothies. Now, we tend to think smoothies are good for us because they're loaded with fruits and vegetables, but that can be misleading. Smoothies, they can be good for you in small sizes. Now, the reason why smoothies generally aren't that good for you is because it has all that fruit and stuff in them. And with those fruits, they load them up with fruits. And with those fruits, they've got healthy doses of carbs and natural sugar. Now, like I said, fruit is good for you, but everything in moderation, because at the end of the day, natural sugar is still sugar. So you do have to watch your intake of it, especially if your body type is like mine. Like if my body type, no matter what kind of sugar it is, if I take in too much, my body likes to hold on to it. Then I have to work out even harder in the gym for my body to shed this god awful fat cells. So anyway, so if you're trying to cut your carbs and your sugar intake, avoid the large size fruity smoothies and get the smaller version. Or you can avoid the fruit ones altogether and just opt for fresh fruit. But if you do want to get into the smoothie game and you're on a low carb or you're on a low sugar plan, then just go for the veggie heavy smoothies. Now these smoothie varieties, but you got to watch some of these smoothie varieties, and namely the smoothie varieties by Naked. Those can contain anywhere from 44 to 55 grams of carbs per 15-ounce bottle. So me personally, I don't drink Naked smoothies. They really don't taste all that good to me. But even if they did taste good, I mean, just with the carbs and the sugar content that's in them, you're really not doing your body any favors, and you're slowing yourself down. Because again, you got to watch whenever you see a lot of these labels, you have to be vigilant, because at the end of the day, a lot of it is marketing. And these food companies, at the end of the day, they're all about making the buck. So if they can dress something up nice and sexy and make it sound like it's healthier than it actually is, they know people who are, getting into this lifestyle, or the people who are looking for healthier alternatives, they're more likely to purchase this stuff. So be vigilant with food labels and watch what you're putting inside your body. And like I said, the main things you really want to look out for when it comes to labels, you want to look out for the carbohydrate content, you want to look out for the sugar content, and check the ingredients. If it's got something like high fructose corn syrup in it, don't buy it. Keep it on the shelf. So when it comes to food labels, the main things that I really look out for is of course, the calories, how many carbohydrates is in it, the sugar content in it, and also pay attention to the ingredients. If it's got things in it like high fructose corn syrup or sugar or some other variation of sugar, and that's another thing, do your research on sugar, because there are several names that companies put on these ingredients labels. And basically, when you break it down, it's just another name for sugar. You would be surprised at how they get around that. So, yeah, definitely be vigilant when it comes to your labels. So, again, watch it. With smoothies, you'll want to watch it. So, yeah, be vigilant when it comes down to the labeling of food and drinks and things like that, and especially watch those smoothies. Well, that's it for the surprising carb-rich foods list this week. I'll have the third and final part next week. Like I said, there's about 15 or 16 different surprising foods, so I'll have the conclusion on next week. But also, I want to say this. This is the first of the year, and I know many people, they use this time of year for a fresh start on their fitness and their health, and that's cool. They'll join the gym, they'll get on these diets, and they'll change up their lifestyle. That's all good. I love it. But I will say this. If you start this, keep going. And I'll be completely honest with you. Yes, it's hard. Yes, your body will not like to change at first. Because here's the thing with our bodies. Our bodies like to be comfortable. Our bodies do not like to get up and run. Our bodies do not like to push against this heavy weight to get stronger and things like that. That's how you get stronger, because the muscle fibers tear down and then they repair themselves. And yes, it hurts. Yes, you're sore. Yes, you're out of breath and things like that. But that's how you get stronger. There's no growth in being comfortable. So get comfortable being uncomfortable. If you start off slow, and then you just grow and go from there. But whatever you do, don't stop. Don't do like a lot of people and start off good and then fall off like a month or two later. Because here's the thing. Every gym in the country, every single gym in the country loves this time of year. Why? Because they know they're going to be packed all of January, then it's going to taper off in February, and by March, it's basically just the regulars with a few new people. Well, if you're one of those new people, become one of those new people who turn into a regular and keep going. Don't wait until you start having health problems to get active, because at that point, once your body starts having health problems because of the lack of activity in the past, then it just might be too late. So start now. Now, if you've been going for a while or for a number of years like me, great. Keep up the good work. Because here's the thing. Do what you can do now, so you're not trying to do it because you have to later. Because exercise, like I said, at first, it hurts. And even when you've been doing it for a while, you're going to have aches and pains. You're going to have days when you don't feel like getting up. You're going to have days when you're just straight up sore. And when those days, you do have to learn your body. You have to learn when you need to take a rest day. You have to learn, your body's limits. It's all trial and error. It's all trial and error. You have to figure out what your body responds to, what it doesn't respond to. You have to figure out the kind of things that you like, the kind of workouts that you like, and the ones that you really don't want to deal with, at least at that level. Now, I'm not going to say avoid workouts that you don't like, because a lot of times those are the workouts that you need. But what you do want to do is continually look for new workouts and continue to look for ways to keep it fresh, because when your body gets bored, that's when you tend to hit those plateaus and things like that, and you tend to get burned out. So look for different ways to push your body and challenge your body, and that's going to be the change. And if you are one of these newer people, when you go to the gym, 9 times out of 10, they're going to try to set you up with a personal trainer. Now, if you feel like you need a personal trainer, go for it. And I would say if you're somebody who, isn't really used to working out, or if you don't really know how to handle free weights, or you don't really know how to operate the machines and stuff like that that's in there, then I would say, sign up for a few sessions, sign up for 4 or 5 sessions. Let them really kind of show you the basics of it and the fundamentals. Let them show you, proper form and things like that, because your form, when it comes to working out, I don't care if you're working out on a machine or free weights, your form is everything. Form will be the big difference of you growing muscle and progressing and everything else to you tearing your body down because you're not doing it right. Form will make you or break you, literally. If you're doing something wrong on your form, then it may not catch up with you this month. It may not catch up with you that day. It may not even catch up with you that year. But over time, if you keep doing the same thing with the wrong form, you're eventually going to set yourself up for injury. Because when you do things with the wrong form, that's where you start getting injuries. That's when you start getting the strains, the tears, the breaks, and things like that. So if you just know from the bottom of your heart that you don't know what you're doing when you go to the gym, feel free to sign up with one of those trainers. If you at least have some kind of experience with it. Me personally, I don't use a personal trainer because I was taught how to work out in school with athletics and different sports and things like that. But also there's so much information on Instagram, on YouTube. I mean, there's full-fledged workouts on YouTube, Instagram, and things like that. And I know because there's about 15 or 20 different trainers that I follow on Instagram alone. And I'm always stealing stuff from them. Like, this is the whole thing. And then when you go to the gym, I steal stuff from people in the gym. So if you see somebody working out and they getting it, and that's something that you want to try out, feel free to steal it. And then me personally, I'll go up to them and ask them, hey, why do you do this and that and the other? How do I do this? How do I incorporate this into my workout? Don't be afraid to talk to people in the gym. That's how you get the knowledge, and that's how you're going to grow. That's how you're going to progress. And also, and while I'm on that, I'll say this. To the people who like to make fun of big people in the gym, stop that bull jive. And the reason why I say this is because this is the time of year where you do see more bigger people in the gym because they're trying to get their resolution on. And if you're the type of person who makes fun of big people for being in the gym, stop that, because that's what the gym is for. The gym is the place where you start off as an unfinished piece of work and you turn that unfinished piece of work into a work of art. And at the end of the day, they're trying. So no matter how you feel about this person being in the gym, they're trying. Now, instead of making fun of them and snickering and pointing at them and everything else, flip it around. Why don't you hype them up? Go encourage them. Offer some tips, things like that. You never know how that will make a person feel, just extending that little act of kindness. So, yeah, y'all, we're all in this together to some degree. Now, I can sit here and break down all the economics and things like that obesity and people being overweight adds to the economy, but we ain't got time for all that, and y'all don't want to hear all that. We can beat this, y'all. We can beat this problem. We can beat this epidemic. We can beat this fat demon. We just got to put our minds to it. We got to get our hands dirty, and we got to get that work in. For the last segment on episode 36 of the Undrafted podcast, this is some bull jive. 2018 has not been kind to Andrew Wiggins of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, there was the high-profile drama between him and Jimmy Butler, and on the court, he's had a brutal year with the Timberwolves. Now, he signed a 5-year, $148 million extension just over a year ago, and he's averaging career lows in points per game at 16 and field goal percentage at 40%. Now, he's been labeled soft, which is the worst thing that you can say about an athlete or a player. He's been made fun of at practice, and he's been the subject of a firestorm of criticism. Now, in a 123-120 overtime loss to the Atlanta Hawks on Friday, he was 5 of 14 for 16 points and shooting, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists. And as a result, some of the home crowd, they booed him. And he responded by calling Timberwolves fans a version of the S word that ends with a Y. But they booed him for good reason. As bad of a game as he had in regulation, he had in overtime. 4 missed free throws and a missed field goal. With those 3 missed free throws, he could have tied the game and at least given his squad a chance to win. And at the end of the day, as an athlete, all you can do is ask for the best chance to win. Now, here's the thing, though. He's mad at the wrong people because he should be upset with himself. Now, he's an NBA player, so I'm sure he knows that there's room to improve and all that. He's only 23 years old, so he's super young, and he's got plenty of time to grow. And listen, I get it. No one likes to be booed, especially by their home crowd, because these guys are human. They have feelings and emotions just like you and I. I get all that. But at the end of the day, fans have every right to voice their opinion when the product is simply not good. Because these teams, they ask fans to pay ungodly prices for tickets, ungodly prices for parking spaces, ungodly prices for concessions, and ungodly taxes to even pay for these stadiums and arenas to be built. Then there's all the walking and going through security and all that noise. So fans, when they show up to these games, they feel like, bruh, listen, if we have to go through all that to see these cats compete, we at least expect a decent fight. Fans know somebody has to lose in any sporting event. They just don't want it to be their squad, naturally. And if their squad is on the losing end, they just want their guys to at least play decent. Now, I'm not one to boo players or make signs and all that stuff. You know, I've been there. I've been on the court. I've been on the field. I know how that feels. So I'm not going to sit up there and do nothing like that because, you know, it's just not my style. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to call fans crazy names because they boo. Because at the end of the day, trash talk is part of the game. Trash talk is what is part of – actually, trash talk is one of the things that makes sports as fun as it is. Now, as long as the trash talk isn't overly crude, rude, or racial, I have no issue with trash talk. Just keep it clean. Fans are asked to pay way too much money and spend way too much time to ask them not to have an opinion. Anthony Wiggins, calling fans crazy names because they boo a bad performance? Come on, dog. That's some bull jive. Well, that's my time for episode 36 of the Undrafted podcast. I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for blessing me with the gifts, the talents, and the resources to do this podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to come and hang out with me on this podcast. Don't forget, you can follow the Undrafted podcast on Instagram at the Undrafted podcast or on Twitter at Row4Show And I want to leave you with the Bible verse. Psalm 35:1. Plead my cause, O Lord. With them that strive with me, fight against them that fight against me. Remember, do your best and let God handle the rest. Be blessed.